Breaking news from the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks have traded Trae Young to the Washington Wizards in exchange for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. That's according to multiple reports. A four-time NBA All-Star, Young has been the face of the Hawks since he was drafted in 2018. He led Atlanta to 3 postseason trips, including a run to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021. But now, Atlanta's moving in another direction, and Young gets a chance at a fresh start in D.C. So for more, I'm joined by CBS Sports NBA writer Sam Quinn. Sam, first of all, big breaking news in the association. What's your general reaction to this trade?
I think it's appropriate for both teams. I think we've been heading in this direction for a little while. The Hawks 2-8 with Trae Young on the floor this season, above 500 without him. He just wasn't really a fit for this new version of their team that they're trying to build. They're much more athletic, leaning more into Jalen Johnson as kind of the franchise player. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is a more defensive-oriented guard taking Trae Young's spot. It just seemed like they had decided we're not interested in paying max money for a guard that just doesn't defend, can't really play off of the ball, sort of a shaky shooter, especially in catch and shoot situations. Doesn't really take those. He takes those high difficulty pull-up shots. That's just not a player that they really wanted. Whereas Washington in the middle of this rebuild just looked at Trae Young and said, you know what? We need a point guard. We need somebody who can help set our young guys up for easy looks. It's a short-term investment. He only has 1 year left on his contract after this one. So I think they just said, you know what? We can get him basically for free. Why not give it a shot, see how it works?
Yeah, a guy who's once a face of the franchise is on the move, but this move does give Atlanta some financial flexibility here. So, I mean, do you see them making another move now that to help out their young core?
One way or another, I think they're going to put this money to use relatively soon. They've been linked to Anthony Davis quite a bit. Getting Trae Young off of their books was going to be essential if they were going to trade for Anthony Davis. They were in a position where if they had had both of those players, they were going to be in the tax for, 8 or 9 players next year, let alone filling out the rest of the roster. Now you can get Anthony Davis and feel a little bit better about your books. You don't have to worry about Trae Young opting in, taking that player option, and making you a very expensive team next year. If it's not Anthony Davis, they've also set themselves up to potentially have around $30 million in cap space next summer. You could use that in any number of ways. Could you chase another center? Maybe if you feel better about Kristaps Porzingis' health, you re-sign him to a longer-term deal. Do you chase a replacement guard? Could you get Kobe White in that $20-25 million range and say, we're going to get 80 to 90% of the production that Trae Young brought, but we're going to do it at half the price? This opens up a lot of roster building doors for Atlanta. As the Hawks stand right now, they don't have a player on their roster making more than $30 million next year. We're in a league where some teams have 2 guys making 50, 60. They're going to be able to build some pretty impressive depth. They're going to have a lot of options. I think this was a move they had to make to set up whatever the next era of Hawks basketball is going to be.
Right, and not entirely surprising. I mean, we've had conversations around this for, days, weeks, months, but Trae Young has made it clear that the Wizards were his preferred destination and got what he hoped for. So now that he's headed to D.C., what are your expectations for Trae with Washington?
Yeah, I think this is sort of a prove-it situation, right? He does have that player option for the offseason. Without too much league-wide interest, I think he'll pick it up. He'll make $49 million next year. And he now has 1.5 years to prove to the Wizards, hey, I can be your point guard of the future. I can fit with the guys that you already have on the team. They have a lot of young, raw athletes, guys they picked at the top of the draft, guys like Alex Sarr, Bilal Coulibaly, who have a lot of potential, but they need somebody to create shots for them. I think those young guys could really benefit from Trae's playmaking next to them. Now, the fact that they're getting him on this short-term deal and we haven't heard any news about an extension suggests to me that the Hawks are looking at this and saying, if nothing else, we're taking a flyer. We're not coming into this with the idea that we have to keep you long-term, but if you prove to us that you're the guy for our future, we'll extend you when that time comes. I don't think there was enough league-wide interest for Trae to say, oh, I'm going to be picky. I have to go to a contender. I have to go to this market. I think this was a chance for him to lock up a long-term job and prove I can be somebody's core centerpiece ball handler moving forward. The Wizards were his best chance of getting paid.
Right, and kind of surprising to me that you say there's not a lot of league-wide interest. I mean, this is just one of 3 players in NBA history to average over 25 points and 8 assists per game in his career. So maybe we'll see the resurgence of Ice Trae in D.C., but when you look at the trade overall and what everyone got in exchange for it, how do you grade this trade, Sam?
Yeah, it's a B+ for Atlanta. I know Trae Young is an all-star, very, very talented player, but the league is moving away from this archetype, right? Guys who have to have the ball in their hands all the time, who are small, who are defensively deficient. We're seeing this around the league. John Morant not generating that much trade interest. LaMelo Ball when he came up as well. These kinds of point guards just aren't generating the interest that they used to. And the Hawks were trying to get ahead of this. They didn't want to risk going into next season with $50 million owed to a player that, frankly, we now know they didn't want. So I think this was smart for them. I think getting Corey Kispert is a nice little addition here. Good shooter to have on a reasonable sub-mid-level contract. You're still going to have either that $30 million or so in cap space or the flexibility to make a trade during the season. They had clearly decided that this era had run its course. To do that and to get off of the contract without having to give up draft picks, as had been reported, to get a nice role player back on a good contract, I think they did pretty well here.
They did pretty well indeed. Trae Young headed to D.C., the Atlanta Hawks rebuilding around the young core. Sam Quinn, thank you so much for the insight on this breaking news in the association. As we take a look at the trade details again, the Wizards receiving Trae Young in exchange for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. Long-anticipated trade is underway. Breaking news from the NBA, the Atlanta Hawks have traded Trae Young to the Washington Wizards for CJ McCollum and Corey Kispert. That's according to multiple reports. A four-time All-Star, Young has been the face of the Hawks since he was drafted in 2018. He led Atlanta to 3 postseason appearances, including a run to the Eastern Conference Finals in 2021. But now, Atlanta is moving in another direction, and Young gets a chance at a fresh start in D.C. For more, I'm joined by CBS Sports NBA analyst John Gonzalez. John, this trade has been kind of percolating for a while now, but what's your general reaction?
Yeah, it has been percolating for a while, right? And at some point, the Atlanta Hawks looked around and went, it's been fun, Trae Young, but we're going to have to move on from you. And we really got an indication of that, Madeline, this offseason when they had an opportunity to extend Trae Young. He definitely wanted a contract extension. And the new front office led by Ansi Saleh, who's a really smart guy, they put together a group and they went, we'd rather not pay you. And that's really when the writing was on the wall that it was time for him to move on. This has been Jalen Johnson's team for a while. Casual NBA fans are starting to get clued into him. He's going to be an all-star this year. He's playing at an all-NBA caliber level. And they just decided that, like, they really can't move forward with Trae Young anymore. They're not a good defensive team in general, Madeline. They're just 16th, middle of the pack in defensive rating. They're a horrendous defensive team when Trae Young is out there. He's still a good passer. He's still a really good scorer, although inefficient, but he really brings their level down on the whole. Just 17-21 this year, 10th in the East. They're only 2-8. He's only played 10 games this year. And so finally they were looking around. This wasn't a huge market for Trae Young, but they finally found a taker in the Washington Wizards who were willing to say, okay, we'll bring him in. We'll kick the tires. He's got a player option at $48.9 million next year. We'll see how it goes, and then we'll go from there.
It's incredible to see how much Trae Young's star has fallen, though. I mean, again, early round draft pick in 2018, Ice Trae wreaking havoc in the association, one of just 3 players in NBA history to have career averages of 25 or more points and 8 or more assists. But you know, John, you've talked about plenty of times in the past how much better the Hawks have looked without Young on the floor. So now that they've made this change, what is next for this Atlanta franchise moving forward now that they've got increased financial flexibility and building around their young core?
Yeah, that financial flexibility is important in that young core that you just mentioned. So I mentioned Jalen Johnson. It's his team. It's been his team, but this officially signals it. Then beyond that, you've got Dyson Daniels. They just brought in Nickeil Alexander-Walker from the Minnesota Timberwolves as a free agent, big free agent signing over the offseason. So they've got that nice young core, Onyeka Okongwu as well, Zachary Risache. They've got some nice pieces, but as you noted, by clearing him off the books, now you bring in CJ McCollum. He's on an expiring contract. They might end up rerouting him. The hot rumor has really been Anthony Davis. Could the Hawks lay their hands on Anthony Davis? Would the Dallas Mavericks be willing to move on from him? Now, previous general manager with the Mavericks, Nico Harrison, wanted to see what would happen with Cooper Flagg, with Kyrie Irving, who's expected back shortly from an ACL injury, and then Anthony Davis. But this rumor has just been sort of bubbling up to the surface about whether or not the Hawks might be able to snag him away and steal him from the Mavs. So we'll see. Keep an eye on that, because clearly Ansi Saleh, the general manager for the Atlanta Hawks, and the Atlanta Hawks have designs on something else here, right? They clear Trae Young off the books. Now we'll see what else happens, because they're just barely clinging to that last play-in spot in the Eastern Conference, and I think they have designs on something a little bit better than that.
Yeah, now as this news breaks, it's hard not to notice the social media reaction to the surprisingly low asking price for a 4-time NBA All-Star. Are you surprised with what it took to get this deal done?
Not really, because when you look around at the market, there wasn't much of one, right? The market was a lot of people speculating that, hey, maybe the Kings will jump on this because the Kings tend to do pretty foolish things. They're already backcourt heavy. The Kings have thrown a lot of darts at the wall, and almost none of them have stuck over the years. And so when all of a sudden the Kings have identified you as a potential landing spot, then you know that things have fallen pretty far. Yes, he did make several All-Star games in the past. He's only made one third-team All-NBA. He's 27 years old. And as I said, there's not a lot of market for a lead guard who doesn't play defense. If you're picking out one position in the NBA to say what's the deepest, it would be lead guard. They're everywhere. The league is lousy with them. And so you really have to be something special for a team to trade for you and then give up draft compensation. Initially, Madeline, when this rumor percolated about the Washington Wizards being the landing spot for Trae Young, there was rumors that the Atlanta Hawks would have to attach draft pick compensation just for the Wizards to take his salary because he still has $48.9 million on the books next year on a player option. Now, they didn't have to do that ultimately, but yes, when you end up as the Wizards are your last destination and even the Kings don't want you, your star has really fallen.
But you know what? A chance to reboot it, right? And Trae Young joins a young core in Washington. Less than 2 years remaining on his contract, though. Is this a long-term destination for him, or is this a short-term show me what you're working with the Wizards?
Yeah, I think it's that. It's a little bit of an audition. I think if you're the Wizards, you go, okay, we've got this young core. We've got Alex Sarr and Keyshawn George and Bilal Coulibaly and a whole bunch of the other Champagny. Let's see what we've got, right? They've just been collecting these young pieces who haven't really amounted to much. And so now they bring in Trae Young, and he's a bona fide superstar, star at least, right? Somebody that you could at least sell tickets around. So I think if you're the Wizards, you want to be of two minds. One, you don't want to give up that top eight protected pick that you owe to the New York Knicks. You definitely want to hold on to that. So watch out for all of a sudden, maybe if they start playing better, they have been playing better recently, although they lost tonight to the Philadelphia 76ers, but they don't want to give up that pick. So if they do start playing better, you might see like a shutdown situation for Trae Young. But I definitely think it's an audition for him where he's probably going to pick up that $48.9 million player option next year. And in the interim, they see if they're the right fit for him and he's the right fit for them. And if so, maybe they come to a deal. If not, he'll be moving on.
I think one thing we should all do is circle February 24th on our calendars because that's when Trae Young and the Wizards will face the Atlanta Hawks next. John Gonzalez, thanks so much for the insight. Trae Young had an incredible run with the Atlanta Hawks. As we take a look at his all-time ranks with the franchise, he's third in franchise history with 25.2 points per game and leads the franchise in assists and 3 points made in his time with the Atlanta Hawks. But now takes his talents to the nation's capital. Trae Young traded to the Wizards.